Right now, in the middle of your divorce, you're about to make a decision you can't undo. Keep the house, take the lump sum, agree to a settlement that looks fine today. But what does it look like in 5 years, 10 years? Most women never get to see that picture until it's too late. My guest spent 3 decades building financial models for startups. Now she runs What If Wealth, and she applies that same scenario testing firepower to divorce. She doesn't tell you what to do. She shows you every possible future side by side so you don't make a mistake you'll spend the rest of your life regretting. This conversation could save you from one decision that changes everything. Welcome back. Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Divorcing Strong podcast. I'm Becky Sampson, of course, your host. And this is my second podcast today. And it's been like about a month and a half or so that I've been off doing these podcasts. And it's been really, really fun to be back in the saddle again and interview people who have amazing resources and information for people who are going through divorce. So if that's you, or you have a family or friend that is going through divorce, you definitely want to stay tuned today, because we're going to talk about the financials, and whether you like it or not, divorce is so much about financial decisions, and those decisions that you make when you're going through the divorce will affect your future for years and years and years to come. So hopefully you stay tuned. I'm really excited. I just also want to remind everyone, if you are going through divorce, or you know somebody that is, check out the free download that I have. When I was kind of going through divorce, I knew nothing about the legal terms. I didn't know what attorneys were talking about. I didn't know what the court system was talking about. And so I have compiled this free download right here is 100 divorce terms, legal terms. So you want to be able to educate yourself as much as you possibly can, whether you're going to get an attorney or not, or represent yourself or not, those kind of things, to be able to know how to navigate these waters. So please go grab that real quick. And also, just as a reminder, we are on all of the audio platforms, on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. We're all over the place. So Divorcing Strong is a great resource. That's my intent, is to bring these experts to you so that you can navigate these crazy waters of divorce strong. So anyway, with all that said, so Connie Howard, our guest today, has spent 30 years building financial models for startups. Her job was to keep companies from making $1 million mistakes by stress test every possible scenario before they pulled the trigger. Then she looked at divorce, the biggest financial decision most women will never make. Most women will ever make, and realized nobody was running the numbers. So she found What If Wealth and got her CDFA certification. Now she sits women down to build the future they can't see yet. I love that word, yet. What happens if you keep the house, take the lump sum, or sign the settlement? She doesn't give options. She doesn't just give advice. She shows you every path side by side, so you don't bet your next 20 years on a guest. So Connie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Absolutely delighted to be here with the impressive and accomplished Becky Sampson. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are very, very, very kind. I have to say, before we started, Connie and I talked, several weeks ago, right? And I have talked about her on podcasts and also to other people and on a live event that I did for 3 days. And I was like, who was that person that told me that? So
and here I am.
yeah, and here you are. And I just realized right before, I was like, oh yeah, you're the one. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your busy schedule to come and share it, because you have quite the past history. Tell us kind of, like, before we really dive into some of the advice that you may have for people going through divorce, but what brought you to this point and what makes you passionate about who you serve now in the divorce?
Yes, well, thank you. And again, so delighted to be here, Becky. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Now, you gave a little bit of that background, which I appreciated. As you mentioned, I have 30 years of experience in early stage and startup companies. And during those 30 years, I built hundreds upon hundreds, I bet it's even thousands of financial models, and projecting business outcomes, sales targets, customer acquisition, customer churn, cash flow. And it was kind of always in the back of my mind how interesting it is that businesses very rarely make big decisions without having somebody crunch the numbers. What the various outcomes might be, testing the levers, turning the dials, putting in various assumptions. That's just part and parcel of a business model.
Right.
And yet consumers, who arguably have much more momentous decisions in our own environment, when we're talking about buying a house, or as you said in your intro, selling a house and splitting the assets versus keeping a house. These are big, big decisions. And there's no such comparable support system for consumers to see what happens not only immediately, but 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years down the road. And that's where good decisions and bad decisions show up most, not immediately as time goes by. So that was one real impetus for me to start the business, that I always sort of thought about that and how that would work for consumers and even myself. And then I've also worked for many, many years with financial planners, and I've had great experiences. So no diminishment of what they can, their expertise and what they contribute. But I would get my financial plan every year, and it was 30 pages of Excel documents, sort of like mind numbing. And not easy for the average consumer to dive in and really see what's driving it. And then absolutely not easy to turn dials on. I would say, well, my house is appreciating at 4% a year. What if it appreciates at 3% a year, which of course is a 25% decrease in performance, right? And there was no easy way for my financial planner to give me that number. They would go off, and 2 weeks later, they would come back with another 30-page plan. So I built my own system. I built my own technology and my own process for every lever you could possibly think of in a consumer's financial life. Income, inflation, housing appreciation, stock market returns, age of retirement, expenses, all of it. And I began to use that for myself, and then friends and family. And 2 years ago, it became a business, and that's what I do mostly for women. Yeah.
Wow. And when, at what point did you see the transition of wanting to help people through divorce? Because it is a business transaction. I mean,
yes, it is.
100%.
Yeah, so it kind of happened organically, I would say naturally. The first several clients that came to me through referrals, sort of referrals through friends, were women going through a divorce. And I really realized through that process that these are very, very large decisions. And many women have not had a lot of exposure to finances. It's still part of our society. It's somewhat part of our, women tend to be focused on family and on, career, and not really getting into the numbers part. And so the first couple of women that I worked with, it was so eye-opening to me how much they needed this service. I kind of wonder what happens when a woman goes through a divorce and doesn't use somebody like me or another CDFA, because you absolutely have to get your arms around your numbers to have a fair and equitable settlement that will sustain you for the long haul. So that's how that happened, quite organically. And now I serve women outside of it, but I'm mostly squarely in the divorce space.
Yeah. So explain to people, you just said CDFA, and I know what that is, but for
Yes.
people that are listening, what is that certification, and why would it matter that you have that?
Yes, thank you. It's actually somewhat of a new, it's probably, I'm going to say it's not older than maybe 10 or 15
Yeah.
years. It's a certification that is a certified divorce financial analyst. And
Mhm.
so it's a pretty in-depth training, very, very in-depth training actually, that talks about different state laws, tax treatments, spousal support implications, education implications, how to find value and split future value things such as pension and retirement plans. There's a lot that goes into ensuring that a settlement is fair, pre-tax versus post-tax. For example, you might look at a dollar of a brokerage account and a dollar of an IRA account and think of them as the same, and they are not, because it's a very different tax treatment of those two different assets. So it's highly important for women to understand all of those different implications, and to have somebody help them with it so that it's not
Yeah.
completely overwhelming, right? Yeah.
So what do you find is like when people first start, reaching out to you, and when you're first starting to work with them, what are some of the common mistakes that they've made or that you see among women going through divorce, because that's mainly who you work with, when it comes to their finances?
Um, I'd say some of the biggest mistakes are around um, not getting your arms around, first of all, the
Full picture.
full picture. Thank you. The full estate, the
Yeah.
full net worth, all of the debt, all of the assets. What is income really? What are expenses really? And women tend to underestimate budget. We kind of tend to underestimate what it costs to run a household, for example.
Yep.
And so if you don't have all of those numbers, what I've seen happen is a lot of women have a lot of attachment to the family home for very good reason, and they end up getting the family home in the divorce. And then when the dust settles and they sort of pick up their head and look around, they really couldn't afford it. They didn't get enough in the settlement to continue to maintain the family home and have liquidity and cash flow. So that's a big one. But those are all in the bucket of not really understanding what is going to happen to your finances over the next many years.
Yeah, that goes right into the question is why is the house the most dangerous asset in divorce? And what do you think the numbers reveal that emotions hide?
Yes, so the numbers reveal a couple things. One kind of, this is an interesting one and very easy to have this happen. Most people can kind of quickly determine their equity in a house. Let's say that
Right.
their house is worth $1 million. They have $400,000 left on their mortgage, so they say they have $600,000 in equity in their
Right.
house. But the fact is that you can never turn that equity into $600,000 in cash.
Mhm.
It's not possible. You have closing costs, you have brokerage fees, you have
Taxes.
taxes. And so the number that you actually, if you end up with the house and then turn around and sell it, where you thought in your head you have $400,000 to maybe downsize and buy a smaller property, you don't. And so that's an analysis I always run for women, which is what I call walkaway dollars. Here's what you're saying is your equity in the house. What will you walk away with if you end up having to put that on the market? And that's just a real eye-opening, like, oh, okay, let's account for that then in the settlement.
Do you think that also, the thought that just came to my mind is like, do you think the spouse knows that and they're like, well, you get
Sometimes,
that
yes,
much?
sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Sometimes it's innocent, sort of innocent on both sides, but that's why it's important that somebody's really looking at the numbers. And one
Yeah.
thing I find too, this is maybe slight generalization, but I find that women can pretty easily say, I'm not great at finances. I need some help. I'm not great at finances. And there's sort of no shame in that in a way. Men can't do the same thing.
Mhm.
So a lot of men actually sort of have taken this position that they're very good at finances because they don't want to ask the questions. And then when you start to dig in, you can kind of see some of the things that have already been happening in marital assets. So just a comment, but
No,
something that,
I agree, and again, it's not. I mean, I'm a man lover, so I'm
yes,
not one.
yeah, me too.
Um, I just think in general, I think women, it's interesting because in both my marriages, my first marriage, I was the main breadwinner. I was the main one making all the money. I knew where every single cent went. And I always said to him, I'm like, look, if I were to die, you'd have no idea how to, do all this stuff. The second one, I never was allowed even into anything. And so it was a little bit different dynamic. So when we were going for the divorce, I didn't have that information. And I could see both sides now, right? Like that
Right.
women have this experience. And it's just like, I had to go digging and doing all the subpoenas in order to get the information. But I appreciate that you said that you do find that a lot of women, it takes some time to uncover everything. And especially if they're
Mhm.
not in those numbers all the time, it can be a bit of a challenge to get the full picture.
It can be a challenge to get the full picture. And then I find that this is where I spend a fair amount of time with my clients, which is going through, once we get the picture tight, it takes some cycles and iterations to have someone become comfortable with the numbers and comfortable with what they're asking for and why.
Mm.
Because it's that asset allocation of short-term liquidity, access to brokerage accounts or real estate that can help pay the bills now, access to spousal support or child support that can help pay the bills now, and then also making sure that you are protecting retirement as well. And so those are sometimes concepts that are not, just not readily, people aren't always readily comfortable with that. So that's a part of the process that I always make sure is completed with a client.
Yeah. And so how long does a client typically work with you? Is it for a period of
Well,
time or just kind of?
yes, the general engagement is, I would say the minimum is about 4 weeks,
Mhm.
because it's gathering, it's presenting, it's tweaking, it's and sort of iterating. And then every engagement that I work with clients, there's a couple of what ifs. So I always make sure that the first thing that we do is get a starting state down, which
Mhm.
is your current your current financial picture, and projecting out 10 years of cash flow and net worth.
Mm.
And then once that's really tight and everybody understands it and is comfortable with it, then I start doing the what if projections. Okay, now that we know where you are, what if you sell the house? What if you retire earlier versus later? What if you downsize? Whatever those what ifs are, and there are
Yeah.
always a handful that come out.
Do you find that you help, like, so I'm such an entrepreneur, right? Like I was talking to somebody about that. It's like, do I start a business or do I go get a job after
Right.
divorce? Or I'm all for start a business, right? Because I'm just an
Me
entrepreneur
too.
that way. But with your history on that, do you help? Is that a conversation that you have with them? If you can see if it's in their little energy, you're like, well, have you considered, like, what if you started a business,
Yes, in fact, it's kind of interesting because a fair number of women that I work with are in the process of divorcing, which means that they're also in the process of recreation.
Yeah.
And that recreation can be going back to work, it can be starting a business, it can be going back to school. And those absolutely should be part of the conversation. And that's where things can get kind of, divorce is not a fun, it's not fun.
Yeah.
But looking forward, a lot of what I do is helping people to look forward, because there is a sort of a freedom that comes post divorce, which is now your decisions are your decisions, and your assets are your assets, and how you spend them and how you invest them and what you do with them are yours. And that's that's a great part of the process.
I always say future casting is
Yes.
one of the best ways that you can. I mean, it doesn't mean that you ignore what happened or that sort of thing, but it's kind of like the monkey, going from branch to branch in the forest. Is you've got to be able to go forward. You've got to be able to let go of what happens in the past, and it really can be very exciting. It's a brand new
Yes.
chapter. You get to create whatever you want,
Yeah.
um, and to be able to guide them in a direction that they can get excited about.
Right. Well, it's interesting because even when even when the news isn't what somebody was hoping, which does happen, we know that happens. If splitting marital assets means you have 50% or some percent of what you
Right.
used to have. So, and even when that number isn't what you were hoping for, I always say to clients, number one, it's better to know and have your arms around what's going to happen in your future, because from that point forward, every decision that you make is for you and for your future and your family's future. And then in my experience, it takes one of three things to be able to get back on your feet financially. And those three things are assets, options, and time. And I've never yet come across a client that doesn't have actually usually two of those things. So we're women are smart, we're capable, we're resourceful, we can get back on our feet.
Yeah. I do believe that, because I think and sometimes I think, especially if you're dealing with a high conflict divorce, and I give this statistic all the time on the podcast, 44% of women coming out of divorce end up in financial poverty. And I think there's several reasons for that. Is one, maybe they don't fully understand what their rights are and they don't know how to advocate for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is they may not understand the financials and what to do with that if they don't have the help like you provide. Right? Because it can be very empowering to know, hey, now I get to take these assets and I get to make certain choices moving forward, me only. And I know that that's been freeing for me as well, that coming out of the situations. And I appreciate that you do that for people, because or for women.
I'm a cheerleader. I'm there with clients through the process, and it is really great when somebody comes out of that final meeting, whether it's mediation or settlement or whatever, and they're done, and together we've helped them get the best possible outcome. It's a really great feeling.
Yeah. And you might have answered this question already, but maybe you have something else deeper to that. But is the divorce money mistakes that you see women make over and over again, and how would you avoid them?
Yeah, I think you kind of said it a few moments ago, but a lot of women just don't know what to ask. They don't know what to ask. They don't know what they should be asking for. I had a situation. Here's a good example. I had a client, and I came in after the fact, but she got the house in the divorce, and she needed to take her husband off the mortgage. Mm-hmm. And she thought what that meant was calling the mortgage company and taking his name off the mortgage. And what it really meant was completely refinancing that house. Well, that was a massive financial hit to her, because she had to the clock starts again when the mortgage starts again.
Interest rate.
And that was a simple thing that somebody along the way should have helped her with, but she didn't know. Mm-hmm. Somehow the legal system didn't help her with that. And so that was a big financial mistake. That's a good example.
Yeah. What we don't know can definitely hurt us. And I always say, when you don't know your rights, you also don't have any rights.
Right. That's a very good point. Yeah. And then also it's this idea of another one that is a kind of a common question that comes up is, should I take a lump sum settlement or should I take payments over time? Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult for sort of the average person to determine which is the better financial outcome for them. I don't know how you would do that without modeling, and that's what we do. But sometimes actually what I've seen happen is the better financial outcome is to take the payments over time, because it's steady and you can, you have that guaranteed income. You can get a mortgage with that guaranteed income, et cetera. But that means you remain tied to your ex, and there's a lot of risk to that. So I've helped women go back and negotiate a better lump sum settlement, because we could show that it was going to cost more over time for the ex-spouse to give the monthly payments. So we just nudged up the one-time settlement, and then we're able to make a clean break. And that's got a lot of power to it.
Yeah. I have to say, Connie, that's actually a really, really great point and to bring up, because I don't think women realize I kind of squirm when I hear the, payments over years.
Yeah.
Because you're already dealing with a divorce and you have no idea if your ex-spouse is going to end up in a new relationship, and that new relationship's going to be like, hey, I don't like you paying so much every month to her. Right. And then all of a sudden now they decide not to pay you, even though there's a court order to do so.
Yep. Or they might lose their job security, exactly. Or there's all kinds of things. So I always guide toward let's get it off the table and in your bank account.
Yeah. And then you put it somewhere that you can end up getting, interest or investments or whatever it is that you want to do.
Right.
Yeah. And I also have to say, I've also found through being in this industry is that the men don't like the monthly payment anyway. And so if, that's probably one of the main reasons why I've seen that they say, oh, I want a divorce, but they'll avoid going and filing for it because they don't want to deal with the consequences
Mhm.
of that monthly reminder every month with whether it's alimony or child support, or whatever it is, so I'm not saying every case is that way, but I think sometimes women are like, I don't know why they want a divorce, but they're not going, and I'm like,
Right.
have you considered?
Yeah, the financial piece. Yeah.
It's a big chunk for them, typically. We're just talking general
Yeah.
terms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned this earlier too, Becky, about just knowing your rights and knowing how you can kind of like, sort of push a little bit against what might seem like a standard rule. I just had a client in a community property state, California. Community property division was 50-50. This is a very typical story. She had stayed home with their 3 kids and raised the kids, was very active in the community, philanthropic,
Hmm.
charity, etc., which absolutely helped her husband's career.
Hmm.
She earned 0, and he had a very, very high income, close to 7 figures.
Hmm.
And after the divorce, he was still going to have that very high income, and she was still going to be starting from 0. So we were able to really position that fact vis-a-vis the 50-50, and she came out with a much higher percent because she came in very prepared and very articulate about why she needed more of the liquid assets. So if you don't know that, or you think that that's the rule and there's nothing to be, there's the rule, somebody's telling you that's the rule, you can definitely do yourself a disservice.
And again, I am all for educating yourself. And that's the reason why I even started the Divorcing Strong podcast, is because I saw this huge gap. And there are some other podcasts out there that's amazing, but that is exactly, Connie, why I'm so passionate about this, is because if you do what you do not know will cost you,
Yes, it
and
will.
can cost you.
Yes.
And if you know that you're like, hey, I have rights to this, you have choices now. You don't have to advocate. And I don't like the word fight, but you don't have to advocate for it. It's an option. And I love that you really have built your business around that. Let's look at all the options, and then you have the choices.
Right. That is so important. And what I find is that, again, this is not a comfortable, there's a lot of trauma attached to a divorce. There's grief, there's sometimes anger, there's fear. The big overriding question is, is my family going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? And will my family be okay? And so what happens, I see happening, is that sometimes women just want it to be done, get it over with, just make the decisions and get it over with. And that is not, so my role is as a kind of a financial coach in a way too, to guide them through, help them get to each level, get comfortable with each level, and then get to the next level in the process, and slow down. And I can hear when things are like, I just want that to be, well, let's hold on a second. Let's not be so hasty to get that piece done out of a need to have it finished for ourselves and also to not have conflict.
Right.
This is a time in our lives to step up and sort of face the conflict, because you will be happier on the other side. And women deserve it. They were every bit a part of that marriage and every bit a part of that building those marital assets, and they should not be left on the table.
Yeah. And I think that is another trouble that I've seen, you've probably seen it too, is that women feel like, well, I didn't go make the money. I didn't do this, and so and especially if it's a toxic relationship where he's convinced her that she's not worth anything.
Right.
I've been in that situation too. And I'm like, you know what? This wouldn't have happened had we not been in the relationship, and I'm part of that.
Right,
So
of course. Yeah.
yeah, and I think as women sometimes we feel like we have to justify that, and it's not. My attorney said, Becky, you don't need to explain to me the law is the law, and it speaks. You just need to know how to advocate for yourself. It is difficult. It's a time of, and I love that you also just brought up the fact that a lot of people, because it's so painful or can be, that they just want it over. And I always say to
Mhm.
people, I have talked to way too many women, and I'm going to say women typically, just because in general, but that have gotten 3, 4, 5 years down the road and they've got kids and they're like, man, I wish I would have fought for more of what was
Mhm.
rightfully mine, because now I'm in a situation, but you don't see that. You just feel the pain. And it's just, that's why it's so important to have people around you to give you perspective.
That's exactly right. Yep. It's just, these are, you said it at the intro, which I really thought was spot on, but you can do something in this high emotional phase that has very, very long arms and legs. And
Yep.
financial decisions are hard to unwind too. If it's a house or it's a, an asset split, you can't easily go back and redo that.
Right. No, you can't. And sometimes people think, I did a podcast the other day that we talked about, like, if you get more information afterwards, you can take them back to court. I'm like, please, you want to do it the right way the first time.
Absolutely, yes.
Don't plan on going back.
Don't have that be the plan. Take them back to
Oh,
court should not be the plan. Yeah.
no. You just want to get in and out as quickly as possible and not have to go back in. It's not a system that you want to be tethered to, so to
Right.
speak. Yeah, no, my gosh. Well, one more thing I was going to say too is, can you explain to people the difference between a financial planner and working with you?
Oh, yes. Thank you. That's a really good question. And that was just a really thought about what I wanted to do here. And as I said, when I mentioned it earlier, I've worked with a lot of financial planners and I've had great experiences. However, for my business, I wanted to be Switzerland, because when I'm presenting side by side options, and again, that's what I do. I model out, here's what will happen. Here's what likely will happen with your cash flow and your net worth if you take path A versus path B. So let's look at those carefully and see how those unfold. I do not have any skin in the game as to whether a client puts money in the market or into investments or pays down debt or buys a house, or I don't have any skin in the game in that. And financial planners are sometimes oriented toward getting money into the market because that's how they're paid.
Right, exactly.
As a percent, and they're very, very good at that. Again, I don't diminish their skill. And you need somebody at certain asset levels. You need someone that can help you determine if you should be in stocks or bonds or whatever that allocation should be. But that's not what's important in the divorce process. What's important in the divorce process is that you have thought through all those different levers and you are pushing and pulling them to the most advantageously for you. So that's what I do.
No, I love it. Well, and the first word that comes to me is analyst. Like, you're the
Yes. Yeah.
strategist, analyst, and then
Yes.
strategist.
Yes. That's exactly right. Exactly right. Yep.
And
And it's so comforting for women to see. Sometimes I present these numbers and it's the first time that a woman has ever really seen their cash flow and especially their net worth. Because you can put a stake in the ground and say, okay, your house is worth this and your retirement accounts are this and your brokerage accounts are this, but here's what they're going to be in 10 years. And that sometimes is just so, it's kind of a nice moment when you can see if you continue to pay down your mortgage and your house is going to increase and you have just standard returns of the market, in 10 years, you're going to have X more dollars. It's a really nice moment.
Yeah, I hear what you're doing is you're giving them hope.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yes. And a roadmap, hope and a roadmap.
Yeah. So you see,
yeah.
now, I mean, obviously nothing's perfect, but to be able to have hope to a future and the future casting, it really does help you kind of move emotionally and physically, financially forward.
Mhm.
In staying stuck where it might have been difficult for some time, especially when you're planning for kids and future and relationships, things like that. I love that you are all about empowering the woman.
Yes. Yeah, it feels really good. And one more thing that's a little bit different about what I do is it is highly personalized. I've had a client recently who knew that she was going to keep the house and it was a good move for her. And she knew she was going to need a $20,000 new roof within the next 2 years. So that went right into the budget. So it's right in there and you can see, oh, okay, I need to prepare for that.
Yeah.
You can see in my plans, if you're going to get spousal support for 2 years and child support for 4 years, we do a budget that encompasses 10 years. So you can see, okay, in 4 years, I need to be prepared for those two income streams to stop. So what am I going to do now to get myself in the right position? And so it's no longer theoretical. I can say, look, in 2030, you need to be prepared for this occurrence. And so I kind of look down the road and I can see things coming. And that's part of the discussion.
Wow. That's awesome. So where do people find you? So if they want to contact you, do you do an assessment? How does that work?
Yes, thank you. So you've got my website there, which is great. And I'm on I've got, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, et cetera. But I think the best thing to do is just to go onto my site or email me and we'll schedule a call. And I always do the first call, of course, it's just a complimentary call. And sometimes that's all people need. And I'm happy to give that. If we never do business together, great. I can point people in the right direction. And I couldn't be happier to do that.
I said this on the last podcast earlier today, because I was just like, I love that over all these years that I feel like I attract givers into my space. And I appreciate your willingness to be in this space, to be able to give and, and to really genuinely give from your heart. I mean, look, we're all in business, and so it's all got to make sense and things like that. But thank you for being willing to jump in it, because it's not the easiest. Being in the divorce space is sometimes difficult to hear the stories day in and day out of what people are doing, but to be somebody that can take their hand and be like, okay, let's move along this process and let's build something strong from this point on. It's invaluable.
Well, thank you for saying that. And, I would say, like attracts like, Becky.
I know. Look, we don't have to be perfect to be givers, but I'm done with the takers. How about that?
Well, you're definitely a giver, so I understand that. But thank you very much. And it really is, isn't it funny how life unfolds? Mm-hmm. Seriously, I wouldn't have, 5 years ago, this just was not on my radar, even though I was, again, building these things for myself and my friends and family. I think it's so neat the way that life unfolds. You never know what's around the corner.
I was talking to my business partner about that just today. I said, you got to lean in to the path, and God can't drive a parked car. So you've got to go in a certain direction. And then he leads and guides you. And you're like, okay, I didn't see that one coming. You know what I mean? I didn't see this opportunity opening up, and I didn't. So it's learning to trust, and especially out of the doors. This is something that I was actually on someone's podcast yesterday where he's interviewing me once a year for 10 years.
Oh, okay.
He's following me for 10 years. And we had our second podcast yesterday, happened to be my birthday. And I was telling him that, what's so beautiful about this process is that you learn that we may not see what's happening in front of us, but as long as we can trust the path and just keep taking the next right step, we learn to trust ourselves more, especially when we've been in divorces or marriages or relationships that have not been healthy for us, and we maybe not have trusted ourselves. But at any moment we can make that choice and that willingness to go, you know what, I'm going to start trusting myself again and take little baby steps until we have more success and more success and more success.
That's right.
And that confidence goes up. So confidence is a byproduct of success. So I love that you take them one step at a time and you help them gain that confidence.
That's right. Well, thank you. It's very rewarding, and I know it's very helpful. So it's
awesome. Well, my last question I love to ask people is, what does divorcing strong mean to you?
Oh, that is such a good question. All right. There's kind of a lot wrapped up in that. And it means not losing yourself. Mm-hmm. It means not losing what you've built and what you've helped to create. It means protecting your space so that when you come out of it on the other side, you can go forward and not have regrets and not have regrets. Because I think that's a really tough place to be after, the grief of losing a marriage. To also have regret about how you handled it is burdensome. So I think it really means just advocating for yourself and not losing yourself in the process.
Yeah, I 100% agree that I think, and I love that most of my people that I bring on this have very similar answers, because it is a process. It's a metamorphosis. Is that what it is? Like from the caterpillar to the butterfly,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And it does have to go through the struggle, but it doesn't mean that you can't be beautiful on the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Connie. And make sure that you reach out to Connie if you are going through a divorce. You have someone in your family or friends or associates or anything like that you feel could really benefit from her services. Please reach out to her and jump on her schedule. I love it that you help them on the first one and say, hey, this is the right fit or not.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Connie. And also all your contact information is there in the show notes.
Yeah. Thank you. Really, it was really a pleasure, Becky. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, hold on just one sec. I just want to thank everybody for joining us on another episode of Divorcing Strong. I've been Becky Sampson. I'm your host. And wow, what an amazing, she has so much experience. And I love that she's at this stage of her life jumping in to serve this group of women and helping them, guide them to the next chapter. So definitely reach out to her. And I appreciate anytime that people share, like, subscribe to our channel on YouTube or any of our audio. And please share these resources with other people so that they can be educated, so that they can navigate through these navigate the waters of divorce with Divorcing Strong. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.